Hi, Tim Rower here from Rower Music Studios, and today we're going to be talking about some general tips for when you are recording. So before you get going on any recording project, you'll want to make sure that you've got a digital audio workstation of some kind, a DAW. And there are many different kinds that you could use, many of them free, in fact. It's also a good idea if you're using the DAW to get comfortable with it, to know how to use it. It can be frustrating to do a nice recording and realize that you didn't hit the right button for it to actually record. And so just get really comfortable with your DAW and maybe do a smaller project, something that's easier to record before you tackle something bigger. I also like to make sure that I've got all of the tracks set up for the different instruments that I'll be using. So if I'm doing a string quartet recording, then in advance I'll make a track that is the violin 1 track, the violin 2, viola, and cello. And sometimes I'll also duplicate these so that I can easily go back and forth if I'm doing some stopping, and I can go back and forth between these tracks easily. You'll also want to make sure if you're using a click track that you've got that set up, and drones and so forth. If you're not familiar with what a click track is a metronome track that changes, that has the speed of the piece that you're playing. In some instances, you might have your recording that needs to change speeds, and the click track will reflect these changes in speeds as well. So you're listening to that track and hearing the metronome in the background when it speeds up, when it slows down, and so forth. Drones are really useful to help intonation. That if you're doing multiple tracks and trying to get the intonation on instruments like string instruments correct, then you can have a reference pitch to which you can tune up your instrument in the background. And basically, any other setup, it's a good idea to do that before you get going on your recording. Things like changes in tempos, changes in time signatures, key signatures, and so forth. The biggest thing is make sure that you plan ahead so that in the moment of recording that you don't have to do as much work right then while trying still to play your instrument and move things around. One of the first things that you'll want to do when you're preparing to record is that you want to make sure that you've practiced the music you're going to be recording, that you, in particular, that you've played with a metronome a little bit to keep a pretty steady tempo. What's also a really great idea is if you are using a click track for your recording to play at many different speeds, both slower speeds, faster speeds, as well as your final speed. You'll also want to know what the hard spots within the piece are, and to be able to practice those in advance. In particular, if you've got some harder sections within the piece, you'll want to have a plan in place as to how you'll break down the piece to be able to record it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of the things that you'll want to do while you're recording are to, first of all, make sure that you're in a quiet spot. Now, this includes somewhere within your house or wherever you're recording, both that is a little bit quieter, doesn't have as much noise like a fan or other things on, but that also includes some of the equipment. So I was actually doing a recording on a piece for cello, and as I was playing my cello, I didn't realize that the chair I was sitting on was squeaking, and I had to redo the entire set of tracks because of the chair squeak. So make sure that all of your equipment is as quiet as you can get it to be. For a general setup, you'll just want to watch out that for things like, can I play pretty easily? Can I move my bow or my slide or whatever it happens to be, that you're comfortable with your setup around you so that you can play your instrument, or you can sing, or you can do what you need while you're playing. Depending on the setup, you'll likely also want to use headphones, as the recording will pick up things like if you're recording multiple tracks, your recording will likely pick up those other tracks if you're listening to them on a speaker. Especially if you're using a click track, make sure and use headphones as well. You'll also want to ask the question, is this a piece that I need to get the intonation very precise? And if that's the case, you may want to use a drone track, something that gives you the pitch for the different keys that you're in, so that you can make sure and get the intonation correct. Some other things before you get really going on recording, you'll want to check the volume levels for your tracks. Can I hear my click track? Can I hear my other tracks? And also, very importantly, can I hear myself while I'm playing? For the actual recording process, as you continue to record, you'll kind of come up with your own process for how this works best. Now, depending on the program that you're using to record, oftentimes there will be a click count off for certain digital audio workstations. And what I found is that I always give myself a little count off, and then I leave one single whole measure so that I don't cut myself off when I'm starting recording, so that I get the full sound of what I'm doing. The first thing that you'll want to think about is what happens when you take a bad take and you need to stop. So in this instance, I found that for myself, most of the time, unless I've got some predetermined spots, I like to have a good take, as long as of a good take as I can, so that the editing process goes just a little bit quicker. And so you'll kind of want to decide how you go about stopping and then restarting. A couple things to be aware of when you are recording, that it's a good idea to make sure if you've got hard sections that you're trying to get a really good take of, sometimes it's a very good idea to play overlapping sections, and that way you can use what's called a crossfade, and to make it sound as if that the two recordings are actually just one single recording. The other thing that is great to look out for is if there are places in your music where you have rests. Those rests are a great place to stop and then pick up later on. Like learning any new skill, what you'll want to do is find out what works best for you and what doesn't, and to just keep playing around. That's all for this video, and we'll see you in our next one.